video, guys, I just want to reiterate one more time. This video right here is not designed to attack or defame. It's not designed to do that at all. And by the way, when it comes to the overall topic of criticism, if you want to criticize the individual that I am talking about in this video, you can. If you want to criticize me, go right ahead and do that. As I have said before, nobody is above criticism. If you can criticize him, you can criticize me. If you can criticize me, you can criticize the President of the United States. It is completely fair game. And of course, if you want to leave a comment in the comment section basically saying that or disagreeing, that is fine with me. With that right there being said, as I said in the opening clip, and let's take in a second, if anything, I can actually empathize with the person that we are talking about. And of course, that person is Dakota Meyer.
Yeah, I was a warrior. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I mean, you have to be tested. And that's the one thing, you talk to David Goggins, like that guy, he tests himself all the time. He's always pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like, yeah, I mean, that's the struggle is like, could I still like, and like the further I get away from that day in Afghanistan, you know, like I question myself all the time of. The problem is like these people like, you know how the media spins up a bunch of negative shit? Do you like trust the media?
I don't.
So when Garand Thumb and all these other guys that you follow probably, when they go, none of them have approached me. When they go and spin this up to make their followers make them more money.
Wrote him on June 7th, 2021, said, "What up, man?" Grant says, "Hey, boss, how are you?" Dakota says, "I'm good, man. How are you?" And then Garand Thumb says, "Good, man. Just got back from a longish TDY, temporary assigned duty type thing. So it's good to be home with family. You know how it is." And then, only 3 days later, Garand Thumb writes him again, says, "Hey, brother, would you ever consider coming on for an interview?" Seen, never responded. And then Garand Thumb says, "Or not, no problemo."
Like they're operators on ranges. Look, I just want to say this. Like, you're just trying to do what guys like Tim Kennedy, Mark Luttrell fucking really did. And if you're one of those people who thinks you're fucking tactical and you've never served,
So you go from essentially going on Jocko Willenick's podcast and being very humble, which, by the way, I'll try to leave that episode in the description box, to then having your own podcast and saying that guys like Garand Thumb and just about anybody out there who has a, let's just say a gun channel or quote-unquote Gun Bunnies, you go out of your way to say that they did not at any point in time contact you, only to then be turned right back around and exposed by Nikki MGTV to, as you guys saw, obviously people think that something is obviously wrong, and we have to talk about why it is that people don't exactly care for Dakota too much. Now, some people have said that he is the elitist type of veteran. I decided to make a video a while back on this right here. I released it last week, asking what was up with him. And of course, this is kind of a touchy topic, but as I said before, this is a video I've been working on for a while. And this video is not designed to defame him or go after him personally or anything like that. Like I said before, if anything, I can kind of empathize with him because this entire thing actually has, let's just say that I think the molding on his thinking about things has, let's just say that it's taken a while for him to get to that standpoint, and I kind of understand why he is the way he is. However, that there being said, though, that does not mean, though, that we're not going to point out the controversies and where it is that he has been wrong at and where he has been dishonest at and where it is that he has pissed off certain people in the community. We're going to be going through all of this. It's going to be 2 takes. This right here is going to focus more on how we got here. And then we're going to be focusing in the second video more as a bit of a reaction to his Your Human podcast episode, his issues that he has with Gun Bunnies. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Dakota. Dakota's a Marine. Dakota served his country honorably. Dakota did his time. He also, at the same time, won a Medal of Honor. Let's go ahead and kind of refresh you guys on a bit of that story. This first part's going to be roughly about a minute, and then, of course, we're going to come back on the other side, and the next part's going to be roughly 3 minutes, and then we're going to come back to what was said, and we're going to discuss just about every little thing around that situation, and then we're going to talk about some post-civilian or some post-military life to go along with this as well. Let's go ahead and roll this.
Meyer, a Kentucky farm boy who just this past Thursday received the nation's highest military award, the Medal of Honor, from President Obama at the White House. Meyer was on a mission in the Ganjgal Valley of Afghanistan, where he repeatedly ran a gauntlet of enemy fire in a desperate effort to save his fellow Marines. Dakota Meyer will tell that story tonight. But there is much more to it than his almost insane bravery. This was an operation which went terribly wrong. So wrong that 2 Army officers were issued career-ending letters of reprimand. It's a story as old as combat. When a warrior's leaders let him down, he has nothing to fall back on but his own courage. Dakota Meyer will tell you he was just doing his job. But when you see and hear what he did, you too may say, I have never seen the light.
Right off the bat, he gets this interview for 60 minutes. And Dakota, quite frankly, he was doing a lot of interviews. Of course, Fox News interviewed him. I want to say CNN interviewed him. He's done a lot of interviews. He's done a lot of speeches. And God bless him. Dude, I can say this and empathize with him. And I'm not saying this to toot my horn. You guys know how I am. Anytime I talk about anything I ever did, I always tell you guys I try to be as humble as possible. I, too, am a combat vet. Iraq, too, tours Operation Phantom Fury during my first deployment. And I tell you guys all the time, I was never a badass. If anything, I was a bit of a burden. But still, at the same time, though, I saw my fair share of stuff, too, and felt my fair share of heat as well. Dakota, to many people and to many civilians and those who revere veterans, they view him as a hero, but since the recent takes that he has had, people kind of view him as maybe a bit more of a blowhard, and of course all the contradictions doesn't exactly make him look good. However, I also think that there have been some times where Dakota has been painted in a negative light. Now, we'll get to the rest of what actually happened here soon. But bear in mind, he is a Medal of Honor winner, and there are people out there who have accused of embellishing his record. He had the whole BAE Systems ordeal where they claimed that he was drunk on the job and they thought he was mentally ill. And I can kind of provide some insight on that, and I'll be providing some additional articles in the description box for you. But the reason why I can kind of empathize with him on that is because I, too, got out of the Marines in 2007. He got out, obviously, years after me. He was actually awarded his Medal of Honor after he had gotten out, and he also requested that the men that he served with, the men that died, he also requested that they be included or at least be honored in the ceremony as well, which, by the way, is a pretty top-notch move on his part. I got to give him a thumbs up there. Nobody, and if you're going to defame him or if you're going to be derogatory towards him about that there, I have no idea what to tell you. He was obviously wanting to put the memories of those men that were lost in that engagement. He wanted to put them first and forefront. He wanted them out there. He wanted them to be honored, and that is a very credible move on his part, a very kind, very good gesture that he did not have to do, but he obviously chose to do that. Now, the BAE Systems thing, I looked into it, and essentially it boiled down to him basically not agreeing with something that the company was doing, and of course it led to them essentially having a departure, and of course the company would eventually say stuff like, what was it? Oh, he was drunk on the job. He'd been drinking. Oh, we thought he was mentally ill. And of course, he said that they kind of ridiculed him over his Medal of Honor. Well, let's take a look at a few more minutes of that segment before we get back to this. So maybe I can kind of convey over to civilians out there who may have a certain feeling or a certain way they have about veterans, can kind of sort of understand what it is that guys do go through. Let's go ahead and roll this.
Enemy territory in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. Meyer ran a gauntlet of fire not once but 5 times, with insurgents shooting down on him from 3 sides.
So why are you going in there?
There was U.S. troops getting shot at, and those are your brothers.
4 Marines were trapped in the village of Ganjgal after a patrol of 9 Americans, both Marines and Army soldiers, and 45 Afghan military was ambushed. Afterwards, the Army Center for Lessons Learned produced this animated recreation of what happened. The patrol set out for what was supposed to be a friendly meeting with village elders. Rocky terrain forced them to get out of their armored vehicles and move in on foot.
They're walking up toward the village. What happens next?
Right at daylight, they open fire on them. The enemy starts raining down. They had mortars, rockets, rocket-propelled grenades, and small arms fire.
They were waiting for you.
They were.
This was an ambush.
Oh, it was. We were set up.
With an estimated 100 to 150 enemy fighters dug in on the high ground above them, the Marines called for artillery fire from a nearby base. The first rounds missed, so First Lieutenant Michael Johnson, one of the 4 Marines trapped inside the village, radioed new coordinates of the enemy positions. But the commanders in the operations center back at the base refused to fire.
They denied it. The Army denied it and told him it was too close to the village. And he said, too close to the village. And the last words I heard him say was, if you don't give me these rounds right now, I'm going to die.
Did he get the artillery fire?
No, he didn't. The response was basically, try your best.
An investigation conducted after the battle determined that 2 Army officers making those decisions in the operations center that day were clearly negligent. The actions of key leaders in the command center, the report said, were inadequate and ineffective, contributing directly to the loss of life which ensued. Because of what the report calls poor performance and an atmosphere of complacency, the operations center just did not realize how bad the situation was until it was too late.
You can't sugarcoat it.
Now retired, Colonel Richard Hooker conducted that investigation.
The 2 principal officers that were named in the investigation failed to discharge their duties in a responsible way, in a way that the Army and the country has a right to expect them to behave.
Among the findings, 2 Kiowa helicopters armed with rockets and machine guns were minutes away from Ganjgal, but never made it into the battle.
They were on another mission, but they were close at hand.
How far away in terms of minutes?
I would estimate 5 to 10 minutes flight time.
Those helicopters actually broke away from that other mission and headed toward Ganjgal, but were recalled because the request had not gone through proper channels. The troops under fire didn't know that. They were told the helicopters would be there in 15 minutes.
And of course, right there towards the very end of the interview for 60 Minutes, he said this here.
Orders.
Yeah, I was.
The first time you went forward, you disobeyed orders. And then the last time, when you got the bodies, you disobeyed another order.
You know, in those type of circumstances, you just do what you think's right.
Do you realize that what you did was extraordinary?
No, I don't. It would have been extraordinary if I'd have brought him out alive. That would have been extraordinary.
Yeah. That would have been impossible.
Nothing's impossible. I still didn't get him out alive. You know, I had the mission I went in there to do was get my guys out alive. I didn't bring them out alive. So when you don't achieve a mission, you fail.
You got to be the only person in America that's going to see it that way.
Well, that's how I see it.
You ready to be a hero?
I'm not a hero. I'm the furthest thing from a hero. I pour concrete. I'm a construction guy. I'm not a hero.
And a lot of.
Let me say this. I have had guys younger than me who don't know my military past, who they hear that I'm a Phantom Fury veteran, say, you're heroes. This happened back in 2016 at Hooters one night. We were watching the McGregor-Alvarez fight, and it was Marine Corps ball. And, of course, I live in a university town, which is not that far away from Camp Lejeune or Cherry Point. And, of course, a bunch of devil dogs were there, and we were all BSing. They came to Hooters, and they obviously said, you know what, man, you're a Fallujah vet, man, you're a hero. I'm like, not really, dude, man. I served with some guys more heroic than me. And, of course, this is actually how I feel. A lot of veterans, of course, most of us are very humble, and we don't like to talk about our experience. Now, me, when I got out of the military, I kind of talked about my experiences, too. And I can empathize with where Dakota is coming from in his actual feeling, because guess what? I had some of the same feelings and some of the same thoughts he did. I had to grow over the course of life. Now, I don't know if it's because Dakota has not grown, but obviously he acts like he has a chip on his shoulder. And of course, we're also going to be talking about that in this video as well. I guess there's a lot of things in this video we're going to be talking about that kind of stem back to one thing. But obviously, he did not want to receive any types of massive amounts of credit. And I know that this is probably going to come off as being a little bit nice to him, but as I said before, I'm trying to empathize with him because I can empathize with him. I can empathize with his experiences, even though he obviously is way more heroic than I am. But still, at the same time, though, I can also point certain things out. Here's the deal, though. The thing about the BAE Systems ordeal, I looked at that, looked through the articles. Eventually, a settlement was done, and I got to thinking to myself, you know, there's a couple of jobs that I worked when I got out of the Marines where, and I'm not saying Dakota did this. I'm kind of putting myself out there, where I may have come on a little bit too strong to the people that I was working with. I recall working a security job, and I remember having two co-workers in particular that just weren't. they just weren't very good. And I remember being kind of hard on them, but yet I had no actual power over them. I was treating them like, say, they were a PFC or a Lance Corporal, and here I was a corporal or a sergeant. As a matter of fact, I got out as a corporal, but I was treating them like the troops, or I thought I kind of was, and I may have gone too far. Well, next thing you know, they go up to management and they complain, and then eventually I get reprimanded, and then a few months later I get moved off the site, and then eventually I get fired. I got fired over something completely different, but still at the same time, though, when something like that happens, it kind of makes you expendable to the rest of the crew. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened in Dakota's case. From what I read about this, I kind of understood why he was, let's just say I understood his end of the bargain. I mean, I have had employers also hire me and then turn right back around and say, well, he's a little bit too rough around the edges with his attitude. I've just had those days. Sometimes it takes a while for people to work that out. It took me, I would say I got in 2007. It took me till about 2015 to maybe seek help. And what did it for me was being in the law enforcement academy and running through scenarios. That situation actually brought a lot of things out of me that, quite frankly, I was not proud of at that time. But now, having received help for and gotten through the issues and actually being around people and talking to them, and don't worry, we'll get more towards the Gun Bunnies thing towards the end of the video, because I think a lot of his takes on the Gun Bunny stuff and the stuff about the guys with plate carriers and making fun of them, I think that a lot of it comes from his attitudes on it, comes from the fact that he is very, very possible that maybe he was never, he hasn't exactly, how do I say, I wouldn't say gotten help or anything like that, but I would say that he probably hasn't really spent a lot of time talking to civilians. He's just been watching a lot of YouTube videos, and obviously it does, in fact, irk him. But there's one more thing that needs to be said. There were a lot of people out there at one point in time claiming that he embellished his military record. Well, let's go ahead and roll this really quick, and then I'll come around the other side.
Today says the actions of Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer were embellished. Meyer grew up in Adair County, Kentucky, and attended high school in Greene County. Steve Bergen joins us live with more. Steve?
Monica, when I interviewed the former Marine back in July, that was before he received the Medal of Honor, he offered few details about exactly what happened in Afghanistan that earned him recognition.
They were in the ambush and they were killed. You know, they couldn't get out. They were trapped in, I guess. So many rounds coming everywhere, it just sounded like static over your head.
By all accounts of what Dakota Meyer did in September of 2009 in Afghanistan, deserved a Medal of Honor nomination. This is what President Obama said at the White House in September.
You did your duty above and beyond, and you kept the faith with the highest traditions of the Marine Corps that you love.
A report in the McClatchy newspapers, which includes the Lexington Herald Leader, questions some details previously made public.
You think about it all the time?
Every day, there's not a second that doesn't go by that I don't think about it.
According to the copyrighted story, sworn statements by Meyer and others indicate he didn't save the lives of 13 U.S. servicemen, and there is no proof he killed at least 8 Taliban insurgents. But McClatchy found at least 7 witnesses who said Meyer performed heroic deeds in the face of almost certain death. Here's what Meyer told 60 Minutes.
Did you think you were going to die?
I didn't think I was going to die. I knew I was.
Meyer became the first living Marine since Vietnam to receive the Medal of Honor. As for his time in the military,
what do you take away from the Marines? What will you remember most about your service to the country?
The brotherhood. That's all about the brotherhood. You know, family. That's what it's about. You know, fighting for your country, doing the right thing.
The 23-year-old Meyer told me this morning he will have no comment at this time.
I don't know if you know this or not, but Dakota was being featured on Fox News. He was being featured on CNN. He was being featured on the History Channel. He was being featured in a lot of YouTube videos. And he was kind of telling his story, explaining things, a lot of speeches. And I'm pretty sure after a while there may be some things that, quite frankly, are somewhat contradicted. However, from what I saw about people claiming that he embellished his military record, it didn't seem to me like there was a whole lot there. Oftentimes we think about this one incident, and obviously it was him receiving his Medal of Honor, which, by the way, I felt that he earned. He's the last living Marine that I can think of off the top of my head, where he was the first living Marine since Vietnam to receive a Medal of Honor. And, of course, obviously he deserves to be respected. He needs to be honored, of course. But then again, at the same time, though, just because you were a veteran does not mean you cannot be criticized. You are not above criticism. We had this entire thing with Tim Kennedy saying that veterans you can't be criticizing veterans. And I kind of look at him and I'm like, man, seeing how it is that you've turned on the people. You're basically what I said the Tim Kennedy thing was he was exposed for being anti-2A. And of course, basically the point that I was trying to make in that one was, look, dude, you got a lot of people right now who are buying up firearms because they fear the government. And instead of telling people that you shouldn't be buying guns or maybe that you're better than them, maybe what you should be doing is training them. There are a lot of guys who are not prior service military who go to the range and actually train and work their butt offs. And of course, they actually get very good at what they do. We'll get more to that here in a second. And that'll be coming up a lot more in the second video that I have on this topic. But here's what people, I think, need to basically understand in this case. Nothing ever came out about that. And of course, people were trying to point at the fact that maybe there were some contradictions. Maybe people were pointing at the fact that maybe it wasn't the same story that he gave. As I've said before, he was on a lot of different networks. So it's very, very possible that things could have slipped. So in that case, I really and truly can't come out here and say that he embellished his record. As a matter of fact, I've never said anybody, any veteran that I've ever seen did in fact embellish their record, even though there are some guys, when you have a conversation with them, you may know that they may not be 100%, let's just say, truthful. But in the case of Dakota, I don't think that's the case. It's kind of like with the BAE systems thing. I can empathize with Dakota is coming from. But there was one more thing that I think may have made Dakota kind of sour on everybody, and this is a very obscure moment because a lot of people don't know about this particular video. I'm showing you guys some highlights from a video that Dakota did with this guy right here.
In the Marines myself, by the way, this is my cameraman Brett. Fellow story, speaks to the commitment and the sacrifice.
Oh yeah, no,
that people make.
We'll talk about that. I don't want to get into the controversy of it. It's really there's really nothing there. You know what I mean?
Well,
no, we're good. We're good.
You're good. Yeah. Before we get into it, what do you think, as a Medal of Honor recipient, what is your objective in touring and speaking out, and what message are you trying to get across?
Trying to make it, trying to make a difference, trying to go out and raise awareness to veterans. A lot of people don't pay attention to it, and what I want to do is if they're going to let me come and speak, I'm going to talk on behalf of veterans.
You mean like VA issues and PTSD issues, things like that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, so just for the sake of the audience here, why don't you start by telling us your name, where you're from, why you're here, and at least the basic of your story.
Okay. My name is Dakota Meyer, Dakotameyer.
Adam Kokesh. Now, I don't really know who this guy is, but I did watch this particular interview not that long ago, and I'll link it in the description box for you. Basically, what happens here is that Kokesh is having a conversation with him. He's asking him some questions, and I didn't think that anything Dakota said was like, I wouldn't say there wasn't a whole lot that I didn't agree with or agree with. It just seemed to me like maybe he might have been a little bit awkward at the time, a little bit nervous. Obviously, when somebody's got a microphone in your face and you agree to do an interview, you're probably still going to be a little bit nervous. However, what I found very odd and very weird was after this entire thing was over with, which by the way is about 4/5 of the actual video, Kokesh gets in front of the camera. A separate thing is actually edited. That he edited in, basically saying he did not answer the questions, which is really funny because he kept on saying exposed. See, typically when you do a video on YouTube, you want to make sure you title it right, because obviously certain people are going to obviously see it. It's about impressions. And by the way, I encourage you guys to create a YouTube channel if you watch the content. Here's the thing, that particular piece, the very end, and I know I'm using my finger here. I know I got to talk with my hands. He had a very small segment at the very end where he was basically saying that he didn't answer any questions. He didn't answer my questions. He didn't really give me a clear answer. And I'm like, what do you mean by the title exposed? So Dakota goes out and does all these media tours. He has people take him out of context from time to time. He has articles, liberal media articles, take him out of context too. He has somebody back home in his native Kentucky practically accused him of embellishing his record because maybe something was said a little bit differently. Nothing ever really happened as a result of this. And then you turn right back around and you see this, and then you think to yourself, okay, this guy made a YouTube video about me and he got a lot of views, and he said exposed, and you watch the video and you're like, whoa, how the hell did this right here expose me? Then you turn right back around the last 2 minutes and then you lie about me. The guy's probably not going to have a good attitude towards civilians. You guys catching my drift? Editing Paul here. Now, there's something I completely spaced, which, by the way, I went back and looked at my actual script and notes itself. I forgot to put this in here, but I'm putting it here now. You're seeing a lot of thumbnails of videos that Dakota Meyer has basically been featured in here on YouTube. Joe Rogan, of course, bringing up post-traumatic stress disorder, his treatments for anxiety. I don't know if Dakota knows this or not, and this kind of goes to what Rob O'Neill said in his interview that he did with Sean Ryan, where he said that Dakota had actually had his Medal of Honor ripped off his neck. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of guys don't like post-traumatic stress disorder. They don't want it exposed, as far as they don't want somebody to know that they have it. There is always that guy, and I'm pretty sure there are other veterans out here that can kind of empathize with this. There's always that guy that will be diagnosed and then go out there and say that they have post-traumatic stress disorder. This right here could also factor into, how do I say, why it is that some guys already have a negative review of him. I mean, you've been going on David Letterman, Joe Rogan, you've been on several podcasts. It was recently revealed, you revealed it to Megyn Kelly, that you got drunk before you went to your Medal of Honor ceremony, which, by the way, I would say was very bad, and I would actually hit him for. It is definitely an unprofessional look. It does make for good stories at a later date. I understand that you're going in front of the president. Maybe you might want to feel a little bit buzzed or relaxed, but then again, though, as you guys know, sometimes you drink a beer, next thing you know it's 2 beers, next thing you know it's 3 beers, then it's 4, it's 5, next thing you know you're pretty well buzzed. So there are a lot of things that a lot of veterans don't like him for right off the bat. But as I've said before, these are all things that, quite frankly, I personally can empathize with to a certain degree, because I've kind of been in the same spot when it came to dealing with civilians. One more thing too, I'm going to be bringing up the Adam Kokesh interview in this video here. And there are moments in that little interview that he did where it just seemed to me like he was extremely uncomfortable talking to that guy. He was trying to hold it together the best he could. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a bit of a pain. And if I didn't say it before, there are moments where obviously people have kind of pointed out that maybe he might be contradicting himself in his stories or whatnot, especially when we talked about the first time he killed a man. It actually occurred to me that sometimes the mind will actually make up things or probably input certain things in there. I'm going to go ahead and kind of reveal it now. I've kind of got post-traumatic stress disorder myself and getting paid for it. Memory loss is something that does in fact happen, and sometimes you may accidentally think of something that may or may not have happened. It's probably one of the reasons why it is that I personally would like to actually relive the events I went through, and the reason why I would like to do that is to see how it actually went. If you guys can kind of understand where I'm coming from, hopefully you can. If you can, I'll probably elaborate on that in additional videos, especially when we start doing more projects, because this channel, of course, is now going to be becoming basically the video essay and project channel going forward, especially when it comes to vets, military history, military film, stuff like that. But I can kind of empathize with him, and I also understand why it was that he's trying to bring awareness to the topic of post-traumatic stress disorder. It's something that, quite frankly, does not get talked about enough in some cases. In some cases, it may feel like it's being overdone. I just figured I would go ahead and throw that out there, because obviously doing all these podcasts and whatnot may make him, let's just say, a little bit less likable to other vets. And Kokesh, by the way, claimed he was a veteran. So I don't know about you guys, but there are some people in the veteran community that obviously are veterans like myself that I don't like, but still at the same time, it's a brotherhood. I'm not going to try to defame them. As I said before, I'm not going to try to defame Dakota Meyer or anything in this video. If anything, I'm kind of empathizing with him and kind of sympathizing with him in this, and for the most part, because I can kind of understand why he is the way he is. And you can obviously see certain instances where his face was basically plastered everywhere because he won a Medal of Honor. And of course, in this day and age where we have, I don't know, how do I say this? We have social media. You have a 24-hour news cycle. The fact that he was married to Bristol Palin at one point in time, as we all know, she at one point in time got, so I mean, they even had a television show on A&E called Life is a Trip about Bristol. Now, I don't have an issue with Bristol or Sarah or anybody like that. As a matter of fact, I actually like Sarah, even though, yeah, you guys can make fun of me in the comment section. That's okay. But the fact of the matter is that when you have that going on, guess what? You're probably going to be somebody viewed as some type of notoriety. So, yes, I feel Dakota's pain when it comes to these topics. Now, guys, we're going to go ahead and roll into the second half of the video, which I'm going to go ahead and basically look at some of the things that Dakota has kind of gotten Dakota in hot water. Some of these clips here came from, you guys obviously saw the first one came from Jocko Willenick. Obviously, there's the thing that the whole situation with Garand Thumb, the Dash Gym thing. Some of this came from Nikki MGTV. Some of this stuff was obviously articled as well. And of course, we're going to talk more about what happened on the You're Human podcast. We're going to talk more about that in part 2 because we have to respond to all the bad takes and what exactly is it makes him look bad. With that there being said, let's go ahead and roll into the first incident that comes to everybody's mind. That right there being the incident involving plate carriers and, of course, Garand Thumb's response.
Feed, whatever, bored. And I gotta tell you, one thing that's been fucking irking me lately, I don't know why, but I see all these people out there like wearing camo, acting like they're fucking operators on ranges. Look, I just want to say this. Like, you're just trying to do what guys like Tim Kennedy, Mark Luttrell fucking really did. And if you're one of those people who thinks you're fucking tactical and you've never served, all you're doing is it's like fucking Halloween for you every time you fucking post on Instagram, right? Because you're just trying to dress up and be something that you never are. And it's just so fucked up because you're trying to put off this persona that you're something that you're fucking not. And, yeah, I mean, here's the best way to gauge it. If you've never had to kiss your family goodbye, wondering if you're going to ever come home, quit trying to make up for it in your later years. You didn't serve. You didn't do it. Good on you. Congratulations, whatever. But you didn't fucking serve. Stop trying to act like you did and give off this persona, because Instagram gives you a platform to be whatever the fuck you want to create today. That's what's
some
wrong.
comments were made by a couple individuals about wearing plate carrier and shooting kit and that type of thing. Well, you have rights, not just rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution, but rather rights that are inherent, they're God-given. If you don't believe in a God, then they are natural and typical of the animal kingdom. Those, of course, are the right to self-defense. So continue to wear your plate carrier, continue to shoot with your rifle, and if you are perceived as being an operator online, it means you're trained to a pretty high level, so keep doing you.
Now, you guys obviously saw Garand Thumb's response on Instagram, okay? You guys obviously saw that, and you guys obviously saw at the very beginning of the video how it was that he claimed that Garand Thumb and these guys have not reached out to him, which, of course, I've already kind of exposed to you guys through Nikki MGTV that he's actually lying about that. But here's the thing. That would also then prompt another response that went viral on YouTube.
Real quick, and then I'm going to tell you why that guy just fucking pissed me off. Alright, I'm a retired Green Beret from the United States Army. I've got like 4 years in combat underneath my fucking belt at least. Okay? Everybody knows what Monday is, yes? Yeah. It's Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to tell you why this fucking event just motivated the shit out of me. At the last safety brief we just did against your enemy, a guy came up to me and fucking approached me afterwards. His uncle was one of my teammates that got killed overseas fighting. Had this event not taken place, I would have never got the opportunity to tell him what happened to his fucking uncle on Memorial Day weekend. Pretty fucking motivating, right? Yeah, so I really don't give two shits what he says or anything like that. If you guys have any hate in your heart towards that man, please let that go, okay? However, know that that is not how the entire community feels about it. Sound good? So you guys will see me around, like I'll be floating around. I'm actually going to go probably throw on some gear and fight beside him because I think that'd be badass to do on Memorial Day weekend. But I got to go find him and he's laying in wait for you guys. So go find him and then I'll probably be fighting against you tomorrow.
Nothing I could ever.
Now, guys, when I got out of the Marines in 2007, I used to play the Army Marine thing. I used to play that thing, and after a while, I kind of softened up, especially when it came to guys and other services. After a while, I kind of realized that it's just playful banter. We Marines, we bust the Army's balls all the time for training, and of course, somewhat being overweight or whatever, they bust our balls, say stuff like, you guys are just the Department of the Navy, of course, the men's department. And of course, they always bust our balls about being crayon eaters, and we typically tend to respond by, we're my favorites, obviously the green or the red because we love cherry, strawberry, or sour apple. It's inter-service banter. We do this crap to one another all the time. We pick on Air Force guys, but we realize that we can't control the skies without the Air Force. We can't control the air without the Air Force. Also, at the same time, the Navy, you guys patrol the waters, you guys keep us safe abroad, and in order for us to get to a fight, we obviously have to get a ride from the Navy. It's just good old-fashioned banter. We bust one of those chops all the time. So I never played the whole tribal thing here, which, by the way, allowed me to kind of go into my thinking about this entire circumstance from the start. Now, I'm going to bring up the Dash Gym thing here in a second, but before I bring up the Dash Gym thing, I need to go ahead and give you guys my personal opinion on that Instagram video that Dakota had released. So here's the deal. And you guys can obviously hear my chair squeaking. Here's the deal. From about 2009 to about 2016, I had a mindset a lot like what Dakota had. I thought the guys going out there playing the airsoft war, playing the paintball wars and stuff like that, I thought for the vast majority of these guys were just, doing this stuff right here to, of course, take pictures and put it on Instagram or put it on Facebook. However, I got to ask you guys a question. How is it that you think that people learn about the Second Amendment? How is it that you think people kind of get the impression that maybe I might want to join the military someday? Well, obviously, playing airsoft war and playing paintball guns and stuff like that, wars, is obviously going to probably motivate somebody. Now, here's my deal, okay? As long as you're not committing outright stolen valor, I really don't care. Obviously, we can pick on the guy who has the I never joined, but I know everything, the starter, Glock starter pack, whatever you guys might want to call it. We all know that guy, but at the same time, though, what kind of changed my thinking on this was when I was a gun salesman at a Dunham Sports. I worked directly with a guy who was former law enforcement, and his thing was he used to love to give guys who were military, he used to love to bust our balls. Well, after a while, I kind of got tired of it and kind of put him in his place. However, we kind of came to an agreement on that later on, but I think that was actually the tip of my actual thinking, the tip of my discontent. This is part of what I'm saying. I can kind of empathize with Dakota on this. The thing is this right here. After a while, I learned that this guy here actually knew a lot about firearms that I did not know, and it might be a good idea to actually pick this guy's brain. He never joined the military. He couldn't join the military. Not everybody in the world can join the military. Some guys have got families when a war breaks out. Some guys have got different types of circumstances and situations. I used to kind of be in that same camp. Where were all you hard MFers at when the war broke out? Where were all you guys when Iraq broke out? Okay, obviously some things have came out, and a lot of people obviously they think their hesitation was correct. Whereas someone like myself, we obviously went. By the way, I do not regret going. As a matter of fact, there's going to be a video out that on that particular topic here in the near future. Should guys regret their service? I personally do not regret my service. I'm going to say right now, you probably should not, but I'll go more in detail in that video there. The thing is this right here. You can learn a lot from these guys who are actually on the range all the time and actually practice. You shouldn't just up and discount them. You shouldn't just up and just discount them altogether and say that they're not worth anything. Also, something else too, just because a guy served and did not see combat, that does not mean that he is any less of a Marine or any less of a soldier or any less of a sailor or airman. It just happens to be that maybe he was in it, that maybe he or she was in a unit at that time that was not deploying. Maybe they chose an MOS at a time like, say, 2 years before a war broke out. God knows when things are going to happen. I mean, if you joined the Marines, say, in 1998 and your EAS date was 2002, but yet your September the 11th, of course, happened in 2001, and they choose not to deploy you to Afghanistan, then obviously, even if you put in for it, that's not always your fault. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on, of course, in the second video of this topic. But the fact of the matter is this here. You don't need to be going out of your way to piss people off and kind of brand them, if you guys kind of know what I'm saying. But there's one more thing that needs to be said, because obviously it hurts his brand when he does this, when he gets upset. But here's the thing that needs to be said. Here's the thing that I need to really clamp down on about this entire situation. What do you think is going to happen if the government gets too tyrannical? What if the Second Amendment actually has to be used? Is it a good idea to actually insult the literal hell out of those who may be interested, who can't join, but may be interested in defending their homes? Don't you think it might be a good idea? Don't you think it might be a good idea for, I don't know, maybe you to like help them out, help train, teach them a few things? Don't you think it might be a good idea to do that? I mean, the last thing you would want to do is piss off the person who's in the fighting hole next to you fighting against the federal government. I mean, dude, you swore an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States, not the frickin' federal government.
Look, I just want to say this. Like, you're just trying to do what guys like Tim Kennedy, Mark Luttrell fucking really did. And if you're one of those people who thinks you're fucking tactical and you've never served, all you're doing is it's like fucking Halloween for you every time you fucking post on Instagram, right? Because you're just trying to dress up and be something that you never are. And it's just so fucked up because you're trying to put off this persona that you're something that you're fucking not. And, yeah, I mean, here's the best way to gauge it. If you've never had to kiss your family goodbye, wondering if you're going to ever come home, quit trying to make up for it in your later years. You didn't serve. You didn't do it. Good on you. Congratulations, whatever. But you didn't fucking serve. Stop trying to act like you did and give off this persona, because Instagram gives you a platform to be whatever the fuck you want to create today. That's what's wrong with...
Really quick, guys. If you ever served in the Marines, then you're probably going to know what I mean when I say this. I initially, when I saw that Instagram post from Dakota, thought that he was actually trying to be funny. I initially thought that was the case because you know how Gunny or staff sergeant or a senior NCO will come in there and just say something very loud, something completely outrageous, and you're actually laughing your butt off whether you know it or not. I initially thought that until the full statement came out, because then he was talking about, well, you never had to kiss your family, this, that, and the other. I'm kind of like, you know what, dude? I had to kiss my family goodbye. I mean, I deployed twice. I had to do that, okay? And I don't exactly agree with your reasoning here. And some people even thought that Dakota came off intoxicated in that rant. It's more likely, though, that may not have been the case. I mean, if you watch Dakota's interviews, you kind of catch a natural, his voice tone, kind of what seems like a bit of a natural slur to begin with. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he sounds intoxicated or anything like that. I know that there are other people on the platform who believe that is the case. I'm not going to go that far because I've seen several interviews of Dakota and have kind of picked up on the fact that he does kind of have a bit of a natural voice tone that leads you to believe that. Some guys actually have that. And then to go on top of that, not only is that there also included or factored into the actual judgment when it comes to him, I think guys can go a little bit too far with that. And he himself is probably saying, they probably think I'm freaking drunk. It's probably going to draw back the whole BAE Systems ordeal, which, by the way, there was an amicable settlement on that. But that does not mean that there is not some form of bad blood, at least on Dakota's end, on how that situation went out. I think we might want to be kind of careful when it comes to passing judgment on certain individuals. Then there was the Dash Gym ordeal.
The military Reddit thread, and it says, Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer thinks it's cool to use his platform to be a douche. And it says he posted his response to a bad review of his business on Instagram. Way to set an example. And it looks like this guy, D. James, has left a couple reviews, said, bad experience. Nothing too crazy. Didn't go in depth or anything like that. Just said he didn't have a good experience at his gym, which is, fair as far as social media and posting it up here. And Dakota goes, or it doesn't even say by Dakota, it says the Dash Gym owner. It says, it's not our fault you couldn't hang. Should have noticed our motto at the Dash Gym, quotations, it's not for everyone. We were glad to see you go. Now, I'm not a person that I'm like, oh, I'm just going to take this one clip. Let me actually go find the source of it. And I go over on Google, and it is confirmed that this is from the man himself. And then you can see there's 3.2 stars here. Now, let's go over to those Google reviews. And we'll go down to the lowest. And so, I'm going to get to all these bad reviews. But 17 upvotes from this bad experience because people are now review bombing. But it says from Dakota. You see now it says it's not for everyone. Not that great, and I'm a Marine. I expected more. It's essentially a beta bar for soy boys. And there's more to this. And unfortunately, I want to go through this because this looks like a great facility. I mean, it looks clean. It looks modern. There's a lot of great equipment here. You got Dakota here working out. I mean, seems like he is doing great things by having a gym in the Texas area, where I would say a lot of people would support him as he is a military veteran, being an entrepreneur. But, this is all fine and dandy, but if you're not welcoming people to your business or your establishment, I would say don't expect to be in business very long. Now, these sentiments are being shared not just on the gym thing here, but on other aspects of his life. It says, this is my take on it. You can be an amazing soldier and a terrible civilian. This dude did what he did and got the Medal of Honor, and that's stand up. That doesn't mean he's automatically shits rose petals from then on. Stoney reputation was inflated. He got disinvited to the Marine Corps ball for publicly criticizing the people who invited him. He constantly disparages women publicly, and all the while gets paid our tax dollars to lead quotations, leadership seminars, speaking engagements to Marines.
Now, guys, there's a lot of people leaving comments in the comment section like Nikki showed you there about dude's not a good civilian. You can be a great soldier but a terrible civilian. Okay, I understand that, and I can go ahead and tell you right now, I was not a good Marine when I was in. I never got busted down, never got charged, never got any NJPs. Only got like 2 page 11s total, 2 non. Well, no, it was actually it was 1 non-rank. It was actually during my second deployment, but that's a different story altogether. I was thinking 2 for a second there, but No, it was page 11 of 6105. Basically, something like that. I don't know what it was. It was like one of them was a non-rank, the other was not a non-rank. But here's the deal. Okay, I get it, but I can personally attest to being on a job, and even in cases, I know I mentioned earlier in this video that there were cases where I may have come off a little bit too hard on the job site, and people automatically thought that I was a bit of a jerk, a bit mean, maybe came off as a little bit, how do I say, came off a little bit too harsh, this, that, and that. But there were also job sites that I worked on, I've worked a lot of them, where I did not come off that way and got branded that anyways. Some civilians, some people already have a negative perception of veterans anyways. I mean, do we have to bring up Hanoi Jane and how it was that she decided she wanted to go overseas and basically throw her entire country under the bus and side with the freaking Vietnamese because she had an issue with America? Most people who have issues with veterans, or people who don't like veterans or naturally don't like them at all, or people who just don't like America, they never really and truly have. So I'm not going to sit over here and kind of bash him on that. However, what I will say to Dakota is this right here, and I would ask him point blank about that. Dude, who the hell leaves a damn Yelp review? I just got through doing a video on the situation with Chick-fil-A going completely woke. I think I'll leave it in the description box for you guys. And bro, let me just go ahead and say this right now. Who the hell has the time to leave a Yelp review? Who the hell has the time to voice the complaint? Who the hell does this crap? I mean, I just figured I'd go ahead and throw that out there. I mean, it takes a special type of person to get angry and do something like that. I just figured I'd throw that out there. And guys, this right here is where I'm going to end part 1 at. Part 2, we're going to be focusing a lot more on the Gun Bunny issue, because I think that issue itself required a much, much larger take, because there's obviously some contradictions and some things that is wrong on. So here's my conclusion, my total conclusion on Dakota. Dakota obviously joined the Marines. He obviously served his country honorably. Dakota won the Medal of Honor. He's a freaking hero. He did a very, very heroic thing. Dakota obviously did the right thing in trying to get the other members who had died, who had lost their lives, the other veterans who had lost their lives. He did everything he could to get them honored as well. He got out, had some problems in civilian life. He had an issue with BAE Systems, who, by the way, that ended on an amicable note, but there's probably still some bad blood there. He's had a few controversies since. He's had people accuse him of embellishing his Marine Corps career. So right off the bat, I can totally empathize with him, and I can sympathize with him, and I can sympathize with the perception that people have of him. And I understand totally, because I too at one point in time had that very, very same feeling when it came to civilians. Some of the same things that he has said, I actually agree with at one point in time. The thing was that I found a way to grow, and it seems to me like Dakota has just got a great big giant chip on his shoulder, and he hasn't exactly gotten over that. Now, with that right there being said, guys, in part 2, what we're going to be looking at, please excuse me, part 2, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at the Gun Bunnies ordeal, which, by the way, came out last week on the You're Human podcast. It's going to be much, much more clips-based, much, much heavier clips-based, and a lot more responsive as far as responding to it. The reason why I want to do this is because I want to come back and reflect on this and kind of get his thinking when it comes to guns, the Second Amendment, and civilians as a whole defending their homes. This video right here was designed to explain why it is that I think that people have a negative perception of him, and why it is that we might want to take a much, much more measured tone when it comes to that. However, that does not mean, and I'm going to say this now, that does not mean, however, that you cannot criticize him at all. Obviously, you can do that. I just want to go ahead and throw that out there before I end this video. Guys, short timer prepping, about to become Gear Issue 33 again. Make sure you guys hit that like button. If you think I've earned your subscription, please make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Please leave a comment in the comment section. I would love to get you guys' thoughts, and I'll see you guys later.